Hello. I recently picked up this game. It's a 1968 Bally World Cup. It's kind of a cool foosball type game. Being that it was made in 68, all the parts are metal, and the thing is held up really nicely over the years, but we've been playing it a lot. It had a couple things wrong. We got it fixed up and playing, but now you can see I have a casualty. One of my players has broken off. He has a broken leg and the body kind of flew off to the side. It's pretty traumatic. Anyway, it turns out these guys are made out of bakelite, and that's a pretty common problem with this game. There are only, I think there's less than 1,000 of these games produced in 68, so there's not a lot of demand for the parts. I actually found some replacement parts online, and these guys, they're 45 bucks a piece, which is cost prohibitive. By the time there's 8 guys on each side, so 16 guys, you know, it's just not appealing to me to purchase the replacements that are out there. Anyway, if I did, the replacements would still be that 50-plus-year-old bakelite, and it's brittle material, and it would just be prone to breaking. Anyways, so I thought I would try creating a rubber mold and casting some new players. Now, if you look at the players, I just happen to have, in my parts stash, I've had this spare player for a long time. I don't even know why I have him. I think he showed up inside a pinball machine. I have found, over the years of collecting pinball machines, I've found more miscellaneous parts inside the games when I go to pick them up. And I think this guy was in that category. He just showed up. And for many years I wondered what it was, and now I know. Now I have the game. Anyways, you can see that the bar is pretty low. There is not much detail to this guy. The only critical piece is this metal base. Looks like it was $10 at one time. But yeah, this metal base, I'm wondering if I can cast this all as one piece, if the resin would be durable enough to replace this metal piece, and that's what I'm going to try to do. Otherwise, it would be a pain to cast just this guy, then, you know, try to drill a hole in his leg and insert this metal piece. It looks like that, you know, based on the broken leg here, it looks like that metal shaft only goes up about an inch or so into the leg. So theoretically, you know, I could cast just the guy and drill into his leg and insert that metal piece with some epoxy or something, but I'm going to try to cast it all as one piece first and see if it works. And that's what this video is going to be about. Hopefully this will help out some other people, because I know this is a common problem with this game. I don't know many people that have this game. I don't know how many of them survived over the years, but you know, for a low demand piece like this, you could use the same process to replace other plastic or bakelite parts, I suppose. So that's what we're going to try to do. All right, here is the shopping list, the things you're going to want to have in order to create your mold and do your resin casting. So for starters, this Moldstar 15 Slow. I went with the Smooth-On products. There's a lot of videos online. I think it's made by Reynolds. There's a lot of videos online on how to use these products. And I just felt pretty comfortable after seeing the videos that I watched. So I got this. This is the rubber, the Moldstar 15 Slow. It sets up in 4 hours. It's got equal parts A and B that you pour. It was pretty easy to work with. That costs about 50 bucks for this kit. Unfortunately, it's not cheap. This resin, I think it was about 30 bucks. I tried two different kinds. I tried the 65D and this 305. I liked the 305 better. The results were actually pretty close, virtually the same with the finished product. But the reason I like the 305 is it's got a lower viscosity and you get a longer time to work with it. This the 65D sets up in 2.5 minutes, so you don't have as much time to pour the mold and work with it, try to work the bubbles out. This 305, it sets, or has a, I think they call it a pot life of 7 minutes. You get 7 minutes to work with it. And I found that it benefits you because you get to squeeze the mold and work the bubbles out. Mold release spray. Get this stuff. I tried different kinds. The Man Ease Release 200. It's what Smooth On recommends. I tried a different kind and I had bad results. The rubber, when I poured the rubber for the mold after it set, it was still mushy. It never did set properly, and I had to throw away my first mold, and it was because of the release spray that I used. So not as many people sell it. It's expensive. It's like 30 bucks for this can, but just get it. You'll be happier with the results. Sculptex soft clay. Again, if you go to Smooth On's website, they'll recommend different types of clay. Get this stuff, the Sculptex soft. I got Sculpey first because I couldn't find Sculptex. I think it was going to take a week to ship from Amazon, so I wound up going with Sculpey the first time. Again, just not as easy to work with. I'm not sure if that contributed to my bad mold the first time, but I emailed their tech support. They said, no, get the Sculptex soft, and I did. It was worth the wait. Again, just get it. Save yourself the trouble. You'll need some plastic to build your form around your rubber mold. This is just, I bought a tote at Walmart for a couple bucks and cut it up. It's fine. It worked just great. I have a nice thick glass base. It's like 1/2 inch piece of glass. It was a shelf. You're going to need some kind of base to glue your plastic to. You could probably use plastic, I don't know. But if you have a piece of thick glass like this sitting around, it made it easier for me. You're gonna need a hot glue gun and some glue sticks. You probably have those at home already. You need disposable cups for mixing your the rubber and the plastic together. I just got a whole bunch of Walmart cups. There's a couple dollars. Get some rubber bands to hold your mold together. I used popsicle sticks as stirring sticks. I cut them along the bottom so it's flat, so that you can, as you mix, you can scrape the bottom of the cup just to get a good mixture. That was about all I had to buy, and then just tools. Like I used a scraper to, scrape my the clay off of the base. It just made life easier. Last thing is this dowel. I use this to poke into the clay and make the keys. If you're making a 2-part mold like I did, you want to have these keys to help you guide the 2 halves of the mold together. And you'll see that later in the video. That's about it. So I was in for a little over $100. Actually, I tried 2 different types of resin. So I wound up spending an extra $30 there, and I wound up having to buy 2 of these rubber kits, only because I screwed up the first mold using the wrong clay and the wrong release spray. I think that I could have gotten by with just one of these kits, and since they're $50, I would recommend, getting all the ingredients that they recommend on their website, and just use it sparingly. You'll have enough to produce a left-hand player and a right-hand player. So figure $100, $120 is about what you're looking to spend for all this stuff. All right, the first part in making a 2-part mold is to build up a clay bed and immerse your piece halfway into it. you want to put some thought into how you push that piece into the clay. First of all, the clay isn't really that soft in spite of what the name says. So you have to be real careful when you push the piece in not to break it. And you want to put some thought into how you're going to make this half of the mold with the clay, because eventually when you pour the liquid rubber on top of it, you're going to want the piece to come out easily when you separate the two parts of the mold. The next step is going to be to glue the plastic around the sides of this to hold the liquid rubber in when we do the pour. Okay, I've used my plastic and my glue gun to build walls around my clay mold. Remember, it has to be watertight. It has to hold the liquid rubber in when you do the pour. Next thing, I'm going to spray some of this mold release agent on the clay and the piece and the plastic walls around it. All right, now I've poured the first half of my mold. I mixed parts A and B of the rubber compound together. If you hold the cup up high when you pour and pour a really thin bead, that's what they recommend to minimize the chance for bubbles to form inside the rubber. It went pretty well. And that also allowed me to see the rubber going into those holes, the keys that I created. So it went pretty well. I'm going to let this sit for at least 4 hours. I'll probably let it sit for a day before I deconstruct this box and demold the piece. All right, at this point I have demolded my first half of the mold, and I'm pretty happy with that. The clay came off easily. So now what I'm going to do is build the box back up around this part of the mold. Hot glue those pieces back around it. Then I'm going to spray the mold release agent on top of my player and the silicone rubber mold. And then I'm going to pour the other half of my mold. I also have to figure out, I think I'm going to leave a spillway here at his head so that when the mold is finished I have a place to pour the resin in. Alright, my mold is ready to pour. I have built up a box to contain the liquid mold around my first half of the mold. I put a little clay, so you want to cinch the sides up against the rubber so that you don't get a lot of the liquid seeping in between the plastic and the rubber. And that's what that clay is for. So I'm going to spray some of this mold release agent on the rubber and the man, and then I'm going to pour my second half of the mold. Fill it up to right about here. Make sure he's covered. And those keys that I made with the first part of the mold will help line things up when I go to cast the resin pieces later. Alright, it has been almost 24 hours since I poured the second half of my mold. I just deconstructed the box and now I'm going to see how the mold turned out. A couple little areas where it bound together, and it looks like on this side I had some seepage over the side. Trying to go slow here. Seems like it's set up pretty well. But I can see on the inside of the mold there's a couple spots where I don't know, maybe I didn't use enough release agent. It wants to bind just a little bit, but it feels like it's working its way out. I just really don't want to damage the guy, and he looks to be in good shape. There we go. So, let's see if I can get the dude out. Oh, I see, there's a little bit of seepage here. So I'm going to have a little bit of cleanup to do, some boogers. But I can see a little bit of clay left over on this guy, but not much. I don't think it's going to affect my mold at all. So that looks really good to me. So my next step is going to be to clean up these little boogers hanging off of the mold here. Maybe use an X-Acto knife for that. And then cut a channel where I can pour the epoxy. And then today I'll try to pour a new dude out of resin. All right, I'm ready to test my first pour of the resin. So I'm gonna leave it with the mold open at first. I'm gonna pour some in here because I'm worried about air bubbles forming down here and maybe distorting my cast. So I'm gonna pour some in here, then I'm gonna flip the other half on, then stand it up, and then pour the rest into the top. I cut a channel where I can pour the liquid into the remaining mold. So I have a pot life of 2.5 minutes. Once I start the mixture, I have 2.5 minutes to complete the pour. So at least that's how I want it all to go. We'll see what really happens. Wish me luck. So this is going to be my pour cup. And here's my parts A and B. Right here, equal parts. So pour them in. It's kind of bubbly, that's not good. And I hope that I used enough stuff. So I'm going to mix it up. Scraping the sides, scraping the bottom. Okay. Seems like it's getting thicker. Now, if that's all it took, then I used way too much of the agent, or the material. Kind of squeezing it until the pot life expires, just to make sure that the liquid gets distributed. And it doesn't look like any more is going in, so I'm going to put some rubber bands around it to just hold it together. And we are going to see how that goes. All right, if you're using the 65D resin, you're supposed to wait 15 minutes. If you're using the 305, you're supposed to wait half an hour. I've waited just over an hour to make sure that it's set up. You can see that the resin turned white, and all the stuff on the outside feels solid, so I'm pretty confident that it's set at this point. I'm going to take these rubber bands off. They're kind of stuck on there from the resin. Let's see how we did. Just have to be really careful and go slow. So that looks pretty good to me. I have some cleanup to do, but that's not a problem. I need to get him out of this mold without damaging him. So I might need to use a little bit more of that release spray. There, he feels like he's coming out now. Here we go. So, I could do a little cleanup here, maybe sand it down a little bit, but I'm pretty happy with that result. I'm going to let that resin cure for a day or so before I go to paint him.
but I think that's going to work nicely. I hope so. Yeah, we'll let it cure and then I'll get it painted up.
All right, these are my reproduction World Cup soccer players. I got 2 of them installed in my machine, these 2 red guys. They are both left foot kickers. The kicking seems to work okay with the resin base. I was wondering about that, but I put some super lube on the base. I'm also testing, I put a blob of super lube on the resin, and I put some motor oil, some 3-in-1 and some motor oil on the resin too to see if it would break down, and so far it hasn't. So I think these might work. Now I'm going to play the game for a while and see how these guys hold up. No comment on my paint job. I'm old and my hands are shaky, so it's hard to get those eyeballs and stuff in the right place. But anyway, I think they turned out okay. I think they might work for a while. I don't know if they'll hold up as long as the original players with the metal base. Hopefully they won't break off at the leg. The resin seems to be pretty solid, and I think the legs will be stronger. My biggest concern is that disc at the base, how it's going to behave in that carriage mechanism, and we'll find out.